Transition. We are at it again with the number 6 best and worst performing animated movie continuation of an animated TV series. But first, a reminder of the criteria to make it on this list. These movies must be a continuation of an animated TV series, must have been in theaters, are not anime, must be a cartoon, must have been released during or no later than 10 years after the series' original run, must not have come out before the series, and must have been in at least 900 theaters. With that said, I'm TuneAmp, I'm tuned up, and let's continue the countdown. Transition. The number 6 worst performing is Rainbow Bright and the Star Stealer. No, not again! I've already reviewed this piece of crap! Please don't make me sit through that again! What? Either review the movie or watch the reboot? Which one? The one where they think they know what millennials act like? Or the one where she's a middle-aged adult having a midlife crisis? Either one. This is Rainbow Bright and the Star Stealer. As I said, I've reviewed this movie before, so I'll give you the clip notes. The original review is linked in the description. The show is about at least a 700-year-old woman who looks like a kid and flirts with a 10-year-old boy. She spreads color throughout the world, a plot that was established eventually. There are other old people kids too, but they don't matter because they don't do anything other than just being there. You've got Twink, don't look up the name on the internet, and his army of colored slaves called Sprites. You also have the horse that is way too into himself, Starlight. And then you have the villains, Murky, Dismo, and Lurky. Because black and brown are apparently not happy colors. That's as far as that joke goes. Murky and Lurky are the best part of the series. So what do you do to make the movie bad? Give the fun villains as little screen time as possible. And add a boy who criticizes Rainbow all the time because she's a girl. Add Stormy, a character who has the best scene in the entire movie for about 2 minutes, and then not do anything with her. Have nothing but a dreary atmosphere. Keep the horse that won't shut up. Make the movie as slow-paced as possible. Have a villain that's somewhat likable but not really threatening. And have a main character that is really bland with no personality. Put this in a movie that is an hour and a half long, it drags on forever. I like the original Rainbow Bright special because it was a fun adventure. It had the colored kids, but they're not really kids, doing something with villains that had great chemistry, always trying to get them. It was fun. This movie was not. Once again, we had 3 specials, a movie, and then the TV series. And boy, does this not work out how Hallmark wanted it to work out. Including the specials, Rainbow Bright had 13 episodes, 8 of which were made while the movie was being made, or somewhere along those lines, because the series came out right after the movie. The movie was not a success. The series did not have a second season. Heck, they didn't even finish the toy line. Yet now, Rainbow Bright is a cult classic. But what went wrong for the film to fail so badly? Again, we are dealing with a toy commercial movie. We've talked about parents not wanting to take their kids to see a movie that exists just to sell toys before. Granted, the only toys that were on display were Rainbow Bright, Murky, Lurky, Starlight, and Stormy. Learn to use your toys. But I think one of the bigger problems is, unlike Transformers, there's a lack of familiarity. Remember, nostalgia had no presence for these characters, and the kids were only going off of the toys and the 3 specials at the time the movie came out. So the idea of the kids catching these specials before the movie came out is kind of slim. And considering not a major movie came out around November 15th in 1985, that says a lot. By the way, I talked about Paul Winchell in my last video. My word, Peter Cullen's murky voice could be an excellent replacement for Gargamel or Dick Dastardly. You guys know he does more than just Optimus Prime, right?
There's things you can't have. Don't yell. You're frightening him.
Unfortunately, due to my criteria, none of the Smurfs movies can be put on this list. However, can you figure out which of the Smurfs movies are the most and least profitable? Find out the answer after this.
Murky, how are we gonna catch Rainbow Bride?
We're not going to catch her kangaroo brain. We're going after that diamond.
Honorable mention: DuckTales the movie, Treasure of the Lost Lamp. Because, why not? The 2017 series just released, so let's talk some ducks. And boy do we have some ducks to talk about. First, if you guys want to know about my opinions of the 2017 show, I have some, but I'll save them for another video. No sense going on an unnecessary tangent any more than I usually do. Plus, I have to have something special for Halloween. So once again, we're talking about Disney Toon Studios, the studio that was designed to make movies based off of the Disney Afternoon series. How did that do? Oh yeah, they made sequels to Cinderella, Fox and the Hound, Lady and the Tramp, and 101 Dalmatians until John Lasseter told them to stop. Now all they're making is Tinkerbell and Plane movies. Tinkerbell is a step up, Planes is not. Oh, and get this. Disney Toon Studios isn't even the ones responsible for the Recess, Doug, and Teacher's Pet movies. Kids, you're failing at your job. So this was the very first Disney Toon movie, and this was the first in what was supposed to be a movie franchise. How did that work? Oh yeah. The issue here is it wasn't a bad movie. This was a rather fun movie. And the fact of the matter is, it looked like a movie. And that's coming from a show that had high quality animation to begin with. Like I said, this is a fun movie, and for the most part, they used the right characters. What you will find interesting though is what characters they didn't use. You have to remember, this movie came out after Super DuckTales and Time is Money. So by this time, Gizmo Duck and Bubba were already introduced to the series. Which, what a shame Bubba wasn't included in this movie. Bubba can die for all I care. Oh, and also Gyro Gearloose wasn't in this movie. Wish I could say the same thing for Webby. I'm sorry, the character gives me the most cringe in the 1980 series. Well, her and Doofus. Again, this movie feels a lot more epic than it does with the TV show, which is kind of hard to do, considering the TV show has one epic adventure after another. Another good thing about this movie is it doesn't feel like 5 separate episodes. Unlike The Legend of the Golden Sons, Time is Money, and Super DuckTales. The pacing is really solid. It's sectioned off quite nicely in 4 chunks. From the quest to finding Kali Baba's treasure, to the discovery of the genie, to the adventurer's ball, to storming the money bin. Each section is perfect. Now let's talk about the new characters. First, we'll start with Christopher Lloyd as Murloc. Boy, doesn't Christopher Lloyd just play the perfect villains. From George Doom to Murloc to Rasputin, his villains are so menacing and disturbing, and he plays a cockroach in this one. Disturbing. Yeah, he does get a little goofy at times, especially with the elevator situation. He has a magic pendant that makes him turn into any animals. Ya might want to transform out of the cockroach stage into something that can easily push that button, dude. But yeah, for the most part, Murloc is menacing. He's no Taurus Bubba getting blown up by doing nothing, or tripping over a wheelchair menacing. Seriously, this was Darkwing Duck's big bad. But Murloc was menacing. If I do have one gripe about Murloc, it's the writers totally forgotten that the character is immortal. That's right, the genie said it himself. The very first wish that Murloc made was to be immortal, which means falling to his doom does not mean anything. He should have been like the Bumble from Rudolph. Murloc should have just bounced, which means he's out there somewhere. Or he's dead and the writers didn't care. The guy constantly got hurt throughout that last part of the movie too. So if you're immortal, you can't die, but you can still get hurt? Why even say that he's immortal? Because it never came into play. Now let's talk about Gene the Genie. Boy, what a great idea to have Rip Taylor play the genie. You'd think he would be annoying, but no. He's actually perfect for the part. If I had to compare any Disney character with him, it would not actually be Robin Williams' Genie from Aladdin, but Merlin from Sword in the Stone. Gene is more like a cross between those two. Because while Merlin has his wit and randomness, he really doesn't have a sense of humor. DuckTales' Genie had dry wit and sarcasm, and he was really all around entertaining and likable. And making him into a real boy at the end was sheer genius. Also, if Murloc did survive the fall, he now has no reason to go after the genie because he can no longer use the lamp. Still seems like the kind of guy that would go after Scrooge just because he foiled Murloc's plans. Now let's talk about Dijon. He's an Arabian guy who's named after mustard. Or was the mustard named after an Arabian guy? He's also an Arabian guy who is a thief. Yeah, the early 90s weren't exactly kind to the Arabian culture in film and television. To be fair, film and television weren't exactly kind to many cultures in the 80s and 90s. Well, at least in America. Well, the past is what the past is. While Dijon is a stereotype, the other Arabs in the film weren't exactly like him. So I guess there's that. This movie sets up the idea that Scrooge is going to have another kid in the house. Add Huey, Dewey, Louie, Webby, Bubba, and now Gene. That makes 6. So we have another kid and possibly another villain hanging around. I mean, it's easy to replace Christopher Lloyd with Jim Cummings. I mean, doesn't he usually sing any of Christopher Lloyd's parts in any songs that his character does? So when season 4 came out, Gizmo Duck and Bubba are there, but Murloc and the Genie are nowhere to be seen. Who do we get from the movie? We get Dijon, at one point working for Flintheart Glomgold. I shouldn't complain, at least we get something from the movie into the series. But enough of that. DuckTales the movie is a delightful romp from a great series that makes excellent use of the characters. It introduces likable new characters, has great pacing, great suspense, and it's an all-around exciting ride. But it didn't make the top 10. In fact, it did so poorly in Disney's eyes that outside of the Goofy movie, it decided to scrap more DuckTales movies and a Rescue Rangers movie. So what happened? Well, it's really hard to tell. It was released at the same time as Young Guns, but the week before that, Problem Child came out, and a couple weeks before that, you had Arachnophobia. But Disney did re-release The Jungle Book 3 weeks before that, and Jetsons the movie came out a month before that. So yeah, it was a busy month for kids' films. But who knows? What I do know is this. If this movie is any indication, Webby sucks at making wishes.
Launchpad, look what you've done to these ancient ruins.
Well, it could have been worse. It could have been something new.
Can you figure out which of the Smurfs movies are the most and least profitable? If you said the first live-action Smurfs are the most profitable, then you are correct. As for the worst performing, that would be the Smurfs and the Magic Flute. All things considering, the Magic Flute was only in 432 theaters. Make the adjustment to 2017, and they made $30,388,100. The Lost Village was in 3,610 theaters and made $44,718,500. That's kind of saying a lot.
Wait, don't tell me. A rug beater, huh?
Egg beater.
Yes, I see. Back, you foul eggs, back, I say.
And the number 6 best is the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. I love how this movie understands what it is. It's very self-referential. Starting from the very beginning with, frankly, my favorite version of the SpongeBob SquarePants theme song. Now, I will admit I haven't really watched the later seasons of SpongeBob SquarePants, so I'm not quite sure of everything that's gone on after the movie in the series, other than I have watched 1 or 2 episodes, and quite frankly, I was kind of turned off on how mean-spirited the series had become. So the movie starts out as your average SpongeBob episode. Same background, same animation, same stories. Same old gags, the same villain with the same motivation. Honestly, it's like the Batman Harley Quinn movie. It's kind of a rehash, only this one's good. Yeah, I said it. What? Oh, and what happened to Neptune? He really let himself go. Now, as I mentioned before, a change in animation style from the TV screen to the movie screen to make it feel more like a movie was needed for some of the movies that I mentioned before. Redundant much. But sometimes it doesn't really seem necessary, and this is one of those movies that doesn't seem to really need a special type of animation. However, the further along we get in the movie, the backgrounds get more detailed and more beautiful, and more intense at the same time. It's still standard SpongeBob for the most part when it comes to the script, but it's really well done. And the characters are so likable up to this point in the series that you're just gonna love whatever they do. There were a lot of surprises the closer we get to the end of the movie. The live action segments actually do mess well with the animation, but it's not great. But then again, it's not supposed to be great. But the thing with David Hasselhoff is a gas. The further we get into the movie, the more Plankton's Plan Z becomes less like an average Plankton plan, and more like a legitimate threat. And, for the most part, I love the message that you do not have to give up all the things you love as a child, even though you are older. I think it's a good message that a lot of older generations do not understand or wish they had this revelation back in their day. So the SpongeBob SquarePants movie was the number 6 best. What was it up against? It actually opened with a heavy hitter, National Treasure. And the week before that, we had The Polar Express. And The Incredibles were still in theaters. So for the amount of money they made and what came out during that time, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie did excellent. So that's our video. If you liked it, please hit the like and subscribe button. Also ring that bell for any future videos that I publish. You can find me on Facebook under Tunamp Art and Entertainment, find me on Twitter under Tunamp Reviews, find me on Tumblr and DeviantArt under Tunamp, or support me on Patreon under Tunamp.
Simple as can be.
Next time you're feeling blue, just let the smile begin. Happy things will come to you.
So smurf yourself a grin.
Ooh, I hate Smurfs. I'll get you. I'll get all of you if it's the last thing I ever do.